let's then move on into the performance section of the agenda today. So just before we go into the specific items, yes, I'll try. Is there anything we can do about this fan? No, nothing. Okay. I'll do my best. Please keep reminding me if my voice drops. So, looking forward to the agenda as a whole, I just wanted to say that I think we have a relatively concise public board agenda today, partly because we don't have any strategy items. And the reason that we don't have strategy items today, I think, is a combination of a certain amount of strategic stuff which is commercially confidential and which we'll be covering in the private part of the agenda, and partly because we're leading up to major strategy sessions of the executive and the board. So that's why I think we're likely to have, that's why we've got no strategy items today in the public part of the agenda, and why we're going to have, I think, a relatively concise public meeting today. So let's then focus on the performance section, and that begins, as we know, Nick, with your Chief Executive's report.
Okay. The first, I've only two items this month. The first is the board assurance frameworks. This is a report back on the board's overall, the assurance that I can give to the board on our achievement of our objectives for this year. And as you can see, it's colour-coded against each of those with items reported back under each objective. So I'm very happy to answer any questions. I'd rather do that than plough through each of the items. So I'll just make a quick pause. Is there any?
Just that not all the items have a rag.
We shall endeavour to do better, because they should all have a rag rating.
Or a target date.
Liz, would you like to just take a moment to talk about the work you've been doing on the board assurance framework, and in particular the forward-looking piece, because this is obviously, we're coming to the end of a financial year, and what's really going to be very important is to set up the board assurance framework for the coming year.
Yes, so it's always hard to kind of retrofit an assurance framework onto some objectives that have been set a period before. The old risk and assurance register that we used before we separated out board assurance and risk was looking at the top 6 strategic objectives, whereas the board assurance framework looks at the sub-objectives as well. So we've had to do quite a lot of work at establishing what the key risks are of meeting those objectives. For next year, we're going to make sure that when the objectives are set for the organisation, we consider the key risks against each of those objectives and the way we're going to measure performance against them as one picture, so that we then take the risks area into the board assurance framework, the monitoring area into the corporate performance scorecard, and we've got all of the corporate objectives tied up together.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Shall I move on? The second item, board members will know from a separate circulation of Joanne's letter that she wrote to the Secretary of State in response to the Secretary of State's letter back in November, which had asked us to consider our future organisational form. Immediately preceding the dispatch of that letter to the Secretary of State from Joanne by the due date, I'd been involved in a number of discussions with both the East of England and the Department of Health Policy Sponsor Branch, as one of the conditions set down by the Secretary of State was that we should have our Commissioner and Policy Department of Health approval to our approach. And I'm pleased to say that we did get agreement from both the East of England and from the policy branch led by Miles Ayling to the approach. And absolutely key to our future aspirations as a foundation trust is our ability to establish a forward order book, if you like, of work that we would be undertaking, and that in itself is dependent upon the new commissioners in the NHS actually going forward with commissioning and letting longer-term contracts for the new 111 service, which it is intended will replace the current 0845 service that we run. So we have a keen interest in helping commissioners move forward with their plans to commission the 111 service, and that clearly is a key item, without which we are left somewhat in an uncertain position, without clarity about our future income, and therefore would be unable to pursue foundation trust status. So the positive side is we've had support and we've had confirmation from the department and the East of England that they intend to help create the right conditions for us with sufficient certainty of future income so that our organisational status can be assured. So that's a very quick explanation from my point of view as to where we've reached.
Any questions, comments, Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, and so the April 2013 date, that's driven by 111 essentially.
Yes, I mean that's April 2013 is the date that the Department of Health are targeting for 111 to have been rolled out nationally, and for the 0845 service to be decommissioned. It's therefore a logical point at which we could expect in the months preceding that to have a clear view about what our forward order book of service commissions is, and therefore it's a sensible moment for us to plan to become an FT. We couldn't plan, I think, to become an FT any earlier. Clearly, if the commissioning of services and the forward certainty about income is delayed, then clearly then so would our FT application.
And are we tied into a year end?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Trevor, then Peter.
Sir David Nicholson last week was quoted in the press as indicating that there would be slippage in some of the rollout of GP consortia. Will that have any impact on our application?
What would have an impact is if the commissioning of 111 was slipped, as I've said. The question is, therefore, if there is slippage in the rollout of GP commissioning consortia, would the commissioning of 111 be taken up by another body? For example, the new PCT clusters. And my suspicion is that it would, but clearly that's not in our hands. So if there were delays in this part of the country or that part of the country, I'm hoping that actually what would happen is that that a service would be commissioned by others, and that delay wouldn't hold us up.
Good.
Peter.
I just wanted to say it's very positive news that we have here, and given where we were last month, we've moved a long way, and I do think, as having been out, I know others have, staff spoke to me the other day at Chatham with Ruth about this matter quite strongly, and I think that the leadership of NHS Direct has got a very good answer, as best the answer could be in the circumstances, despite the caveats that have just been mentioned. And I hope staff will think this is a very positive moment for them to be. It is reassuring, but we've got to do a lot of work, of course. But this is as good as it could have been for NHS Direct's future at the moment.
Yes. Well, I think that people recognise how important a point this is, and it is. It's excellent that through the work of Nick and his team, sort of assiduously, relentlessly following up with colleagues in the East of England, colleagues in the Department of Health, we have got their support to be able to deliver on what the Secretary of State has promised, which is the continuation of the 0845 number until 111 is fully rolled out. and the likelihood, because of the capability that we offer, the experience that we have, and the assets and the infrastructure that we have, very strong position to be delivering 111 in the future. However, I did not underestimate the work that's going to be required to support the commissioning of 111 during the period leading up to April 2013, because that's what is going to be required to create the forward order book as Nick described it. And commissioning 111 may not be at the top of the agenda and will need to be supported by strategic health authorities who, after all, will be approaching very closely their own end date. So that commissioning process, I think, is going to be a very challenging one, both for the commissioners and for us. So that's what we will need to be thinking about as we move into not just the offer that we're creating, but how that commissioning process is going to pan out to create the contracts for the future.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, fine, thank you. Nick, is there anything else you want to say?
Thanks.
Let's move on then to the performance package, which I think Trevor will introduce for us.
Well, Chair, I'll give you a summary of the key headlines from Section 7. Whilst our access rates in terms of time to enter the service via telephone and user abandonment rates improved in the month, they remain below our contract targets, as did our less urgent and non-urgent clinical assessment times. However, we have continued to deliver our targets for the most urgent clinical priorities, dealing with 96% of patients and users within 20 minutes. And despite the challenges during the month, our patient and user satisfaction levels remain high. Further details on the Trust performance is included within the improvement plan paper within the section, and there's a supplementary report on sickness, which remains a key issue for the Trust. In terms of our financial performance, we have a year-to-date surplus of £3.2 million, which is ahead of plan, a cash balance of £18.2 million, and capital expenditure for the year-to-date of £22.7 million. We remain on course to deliver our year-end surplus target.
Thank you very much, Trevor.